Hi, I'm Michael Newrock, and welcome to the Forex market analysis for October 2, 2017. I'm just going to go over the charts fairly briefly today. We've had some good moves over the last week or two, but as a result, on most pairs, we're seeing that prices overstretched one way or the other, and so correction may be due. So look out for that. I suggest caution with all trading over the next couple of days at least. So in gold, 5 out of 6 high time frames are pointing down, giving us an overall downward direction. But it's already moved quite a bit, as you can see. So any trade from this point on is pretty risky. Now, if we move over to the daily time frame, we can see that it has formed into a new daily downward trend, and it may go for quite some distance. There's a lot of room to move to this low for sure. But at the same time, on the weekly, we can see here that it is still in an upward trend. It's had a correction over the last 3 weeks, but that doesn't mean that it's going to continue today. Right now, or this week, right now it's sitting right on the 21 MA, or the slow moving average on our trend Profiteer system. So I'd be wary of that. We could be looking at a possible bounce, but for now there's no trade on either side. If we do get a crossover to the upside, and that change, the high time frames change to at least a bidirectional signal with at least 3 pointing up, then it may be a good opportunity to look for trade going long. But at this stage, there's no trade in my mind. Euro is also down. 4 out of 6 high time frames are pointing down. We've had a recent collapse in price after this crossover, and you can see it was pretty flat. So I would be waiting for another opportunity. If you wanted to get in on a short trade, probably best on most of these pairs to go in on a lower time frame. Say on the 1 hour, we've just had one. This actually is pretty looking fairly decent. If you caught it at the stage, then you're already in profit a little bit. So about 35-40 pips for your risk, and about 50 to 60 pips for reaching these lows, which would be where, well, you'd want to set your targets before that. But there's a fairly decent risk reward. However, it's a little risky in my mind. Again, if we look at the daily time frame, we can see there's a lot of movement to the upside, and we have seen a downward move, but after this great consolidation. So I'm not entirely convinced that we're going to see this pair go much further down. In fact, if you look at the weekly, just to make a point, it's strongly in an upward move, even though the last week was a downward correction or downward move. But is that going to continue? Again, I'm fairly concerned or nervous about going short on this trade right now. Again, maybe on a shorter time frame, like a 1 hour or even a 15-minute. But for now, I'm on the sidelines on the euro. Maybe if we get some movement upwards, again, like let's look at the 15-minute just for interest. If we have a nice move to the upside, we'll more than likely get the high time frames changing to a bidirectional signal, and that could mean or that could be a catalyst for a new upward move, because there's a fair bit of room to move to the upside. Pound also is 4 out of 6 high time frames are pointing down, but this could change very quickly. In fact, the 4-hour swing right over here could easily change to green, making it 3 out of 6 or bidirectional signal. So the reason why I'm more inclined to look at long trades on this is, again, looking at the daily. It has moved quite a lot, and if we look at it, about 600 odd pips. Now it has moved down, drifted down over the last couple of weeks. Not a sharp correction, but a correction nevertheless. And what I would be interested in, again, is looking for opportunities to the upside. So upward on the weekly, you can see here on the weekly. So just move it back to the 4-hour, and maybe look at an opportunity, say on a shorter time frame again, like the 1 hour. Let's have a look. Now it's obviously going down a little bit at the moment, bit of a consolidation, so heavily down signals, but that could change in a snap. If you took any one of these, then you've done okay. But right now we're looking at being on the sidelines, I'd say, and looking for another opportunity to go long. And you can see here that it hasn't been a really strong move. So if we get a crossover and hypothetically around here, then the risk would be pretty good, 60, 70 pips, but there's about 180 odd pips to this recent high, which would be the reference point for a lot of traders. That's what they're eyeing off. They're eyeing, they're thinking that it's made it to this level. It hasn't corrected very sharply. It's been a fairly soft landing or soft correction, if you like. So there could be good opportunity once we get a bidirectional signal again for going long. Euro pound has been strong for some time, but recently we had that flip between the euro pound and the pound Swiss about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, and it's been consolidating for quite some time now. So just to get a bit of a clearer picture, if we look at the 4 hour, we're still in downward move territory, and it's not until we look at the weekly that we can see that overall since August, it's been going upwards. So the higher time frames are still very important, powerful time frames. So looking back on the 4 hour, if we get a really good swing upward, that would change it to the H4 swing turning green. So it'd be 406 high time frames pointing up, which would make it a conservative buy trade and a swing trade at that. Now you can see the MACD here is drifting ever so slowly to the zero line. So if you see a sharp swing up, then there could be an opportunity. Certainly a decent risk reward, small risk, big reward. That's what we always like to look for. Pound Swiss is it's interesting because usually they are reverse correlations of each other. So this one is still 4 out of 6 pointing up, and very similar to the euro pound, which is fairly unusual. So a gradual move to the downside. Actually, let's look at that. No, actually, it is pretty much a reverse correlation. I apologize. I was confused with the pound for that. But you can see here, very, very similar in pattern, pound and pound Swiss. So if we get a move to the upside for the pound, then we could get a move for the pound Swiss as well. But at this stage, no trade. You'd have to look at a shorter time frame, maybe the 15-minute. I'll just flick over to the 1 hour now and see where we're at. Okay, so very, very gradual. Nothing that I'm really interested in. I don't think the market has really worked itself out. Today being the first day of the trading week, there's probably a bit of an argy-bargy to occur before we get some definite move one way or the other. Aussie's been going downward finally for a while now. I've been fairly bearish on the Aussie, and it's finally moving that way. So I'm continuing to look for downward moves. We've had recently a daily downward trend, and the only thing that I can see as a bit of a threat to further downward move is we have just hit recently this low right over here, which you can see acted as support. So, if we get a move below 78, so we're only 20 pips above that. If we get a move and a close below 78, then that would be good for the bears looking at shorting this pair. So again, look at the shorter time frames today anyway, or over the next couple of days, because the trades just aren't there on the 4 hour on most pairs. So if you can see here on the 4 hour, we are pretty low already. So a little dicey as well. So Kiwi also 5 out of 6. It's the weaker of the two and has been the weaker of the two for quite some time. The Aussie Kiwi has been going upward for a while. It reversed recently, but let's have a look at the daily just to get a bit of a hint as to what may come. So you can see here that we've had a recent downward trend trade, but it's had a bit of a consolidation along here, a bit of a bounce, and came back to this previous low, and that's where we're at right now. So again, you'd need to break through that to look at strength to the downside. Otherwise, I would be also looking at potentially an upward trade if the trade forms. Dollar CAD's been a lot more directional. This is a nicer pair to look at. Certainly, if you got any of these trades, you would have done okay. Now, with 5 out of 6 high time frames are pointing up, and no real reason to think otherwise. So if we look at the daily, that's the 4 hour here. So if we look at the daily, you can see recently we've had a crossover. Trend follower has changed green. RSI is above the 50. MACD is moving upward. Not really sharp. So it has me a little concerned as well. And the stochastic is in line with an upward trend as well. So I think on the dollar CAD, probably best to wait for a correction. At this stage, it is really, really high. Unfortunately, that's pretty much the news throughout the trades, but we'll keep on going and see if we can catch anything. Dollar Swiss upward as well. 4 out of 6 are pointing up. Again, look at the shorter time frames and consider trades more of a scalp at this stage. This is actually a fairly decent one. It's probably the best one we've seen all day. And you can see here that the trade just occurred on about just under an hour ago. You've got about 100 and 110, 120 pips for your stop, but you've got about 650, 670 pips for the ultimate high, again being the reference point for traders looking at going long on this pair. So far, the dollar Swiss is probably the best one of the two. I'm not crazy about the retracement on this candle yet, or at this stage. But if we get a move upward, there you'd still want to see it, shoot past this level here. So I would be looking at locking in pips, or at least moving to break even fairly quickly. But if it closes in the next few minutes on a big retracement candle like that, then that's part of the price flip strategy. It's included as a bonus in the downloads area if you haven't got that yet. Fairly simple system, candle based pattern, and when you see consecutive candles and the last one being a very high percentage of a big wick, big retracement, then it's always a sign, often a sign that the market is going to flip and change directions. Dollar yen has been going up, much like the dollar Swiss, but again, 4 out of 6 high time frames pointing up. Not a good time to get in on the trade though. So I think today is more about patience and sitting on the sidelines. And always good with trading to say no to trades a lot more than you say yes. So the 1 hour trade here has just occurred a few bars ago now, but it doesn't instill a lot of confidence in me still. It could move up. If it does, then, and you took this trade, then fantastic. But I just think that it's gone already, quite a distance again on that 4 hour. So, it wouldn't be a big surprise if we had a correction to the downside. Euro yen showing more of a correction. We had this downward move. It was a really nice one. In that one bar, it went down 100 and just under 130 pips. So fantastic. And this doesn't instill a lot of confidence in me either as far as going up. Very, very drifting upwards, very flat as far as an upward move goes anyway. And looking at the potential of moving down. Now, if it does, then this could be a fairly good one to short. And the dollar yen's been taking a pounding recently, apart from this upward move. So it wouldn't be a huge surprise to me, even though I have been bullish on the dollar yen for quite some time. So, we have had this daily upward swing. This is on the daily charts now. And if we just move over to the weekly charts, we can see that, again, this is why I've been bullish on the dollar yen. It has been strong. But once again, unfortunately, and I'm sorry to say, at the moment today, October 2, not necessarily the best day to be looking at a long trade. You need to really be discerning and watch for those trade setups. This one even more highlights the point. I mean, this is more of a coin toss than anything else. I mean, 4 out of 6 are pointing up, but anything can change pretty quickly. A downward move could see that change to a bidirectional pretty quickly, and it's flat. It's just nothing that I want to be involved in at this stage. Wait for a correction, and then you can see more of which direction it's going to go. And it actually reminds me of a little joke, little trader joke, and it goes something like the early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. And what that means is if you go into a trade too early, you can get slammed. You have that little guillotine come right across you, and then the second mouse comes along. Da 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 da. Geez, the trap has been set. It's been triggered. Traders are lying dead in the streets, blood everywhere, and then you just pick up the cheese and run off with it. So what I'm getting at is don't get into trades too early because you don't want to be the first mouse. All right, so Aussie yen, interesting. It is downward. The pressure is to the downside. MACD is down, and if we get a swing down, this is a fairly reasonable trade as well. But looking at it on the daily, let's see if the picture changes at all. It is upward, but it's looking at that crossroads, isn't it? So this is an aggressive trade, being only 3 of the high time frames pointing down. However, a nice downward move. Let's say if it punches right through, changes the trend follower as well. That's going to dynamically change if we get a downward move past this parabolic SAR dot, and blasting past this low, then that could be fairly interesting for a short trade. Kiwi yen's very flat as well. It's a story of all these yen crosses, but it just seems like there could be more correction to the downside before we get an upward move. CAD yen, no trade there either, and Swiss yen, about the only one that's actually been moving up. But again, not a good time to trade it right now. Wait for the correction. Good trades like buses. There's always another one around the corner, so it's just a matter of waiting for that trade. Euro Aussie. This is one that's fairly interesting. I would be looking at going along on this. Wait for a swing. 4 out of 6 of the high time frames are pointing up at the moment. If it continues to drift down a little bit lower, maybe, and then swings up, MACD is looking pretty decent for that. If you get a histogram changing green and passing over that signal line, it could be fairly decent. But watch your risk reward, because of course you've got to have your stop underneath the slow moving average. There's a fairly decent move. Let's say if you don't really want it to move up at this stage, but if it moved down further and you got in and around here, your stop would probably be about 30-40 pips to your slow moving average, and about 50 to 60 pips for your nearest high. So that would be great to place your target 1 just prior to that. And if it continues and breaks through that, then you're in the money. You're going to go into target 2 and potentially target 3, and then trailing, but that's a little bit in the future. At this stage, I'd be looking at a correction and trading or going for a long trade if the trade alert occurs for a decent swing. Pound Aussie, fairly similar, been very strong to the upside, but not a good trade, not a good pair to trade right now. And I wouldn't be looking at a down trade either. Just very flat. So we're still early in the week for trades. Euro Kiwi, very messy, a lot of consolidation here, a lot of roller coaster up and down, so nothing that I would be really interested in. And pound Kiwi, well, 4 out of 6 are pointing up, so I'd be waiting for a correction on this as well. Maybe a shorter time frame, like the 1 hour, might be okay. Let's have a look. If we go to the 1 hour time frame, we'll just wait for this to kick in. There it is. Now we can see that it's already collapsed a little bit from this trend trade here. You'd want to swing to the upside, but if that swing does occur, it might be a fairly decent one, because you've got 4 out of 6 high time frames already pointing up. Fairly low risk for a decent reward. So let's say hypothetically, if it came in around here, You've got about 30 odd pips for your stop and around 90 odd pips for your high, 140 pips for this ultimate recent high. And that's the way it is. Not a lot of trades on at the moment. Keep your eyes out maybe for the dollar CAD, also for a couple of the other pairs that I mentioned. Euro Aussie may be one as well, but Euro Aussie going up would be dependent on the Aussie coming down. Actually, here we are on the Aussie, and it is down. So, if that continues to move down, we have strengthened the euro. That might be the trade of the day. But as I said at the beginning of this analysis, it is pretty tough going at the moment. That's trading. Some days, some weeks you have some great trades out, and plenty of them. So many of them you can't take them all. And other times you have trading weeks that are fairly slow in nature. We have had some big moves, like I said at the very beginning. So patience. And don't panic. Just wait. If you don't see a trade, don't try to force the market. The market isn't going to bend to your will. It's only going to happen when it decides to happen. So the best thing that you can do is be on the sidelines, watch carefully, and tune in every couple of times throughout the day. At this stage, it's not probably really necessary to look into it more than 2 or 3 times a day, because the markets have got some decent moves to make before you get a clear indication of going the other way. But there are a couple of exceptions to that, as I pointed out today. So be careful, and till next time, good trading, live well, and I'll see you soon.